Okay, so I think the curtains are automatic. Okay, you do it. Yeah. No, no. Because there are some slides afterward that are in black background. So you know Lightning Talks, how it works, right? Who doesn't know how Lightning Talks works? Raise your hand. So I don't have to introduce anything. That's good. So everybody get 5 minutes, and I'm the first one. So just a step. Is this one? Okay, so as you know, probably my name is Boriss. I'm a holistic system software engineer. And I will start briefly with a survey. This first silly question: who is using Alfresco in production? Who is taking backups every day? It's good. Who have tested his recovery of the backup? Who does it automatically every day? Okay, very few, very few. So you could say, after this quick survey that I've done, I think that it's not automatically advanced. Can you check with my technical guy? Okay, so I cheated a little bit, so I get a little bit more seconds. So after the quick survey, the idea is to say, I already done my restore manually, so I know that it's working the backup. Why should I test it continuously? I mean, what can go wrong if I don't change anything in the backup script or the backup strategy? I've done it once, it's fine. So I'm going to tell you a couple of real life stories, what can go wrong without changing anything or some of the small things. So when I arrived to CRB, we were using MySQL 5.1. It was working fine, but I nagged to the administrator to upgrade to 5.6. And he did it on the server. So Alfresco was still working well because the Java connector doesn't have a problem between the two versions. But the MySQL dump just didn't work. Luckily, we realized because we were getting errors from the MySQL dump. So we knew that the backup was not working. But we didn't realize immediately because we were not doing automatically recover. So then I said, okay, we should go to PostgreSQL. We started with a prototype. So I had a very small machine. I convinced everybody that it was working better. And then they say, okay, you can get a larger machine because we are moving everybody to PostgreSQL. So I got my larger PostgreSQL instance. I moved my Alfresco configuration in Alfresco global properties, but what a shame. This is embarrassing. I forgot to change my backup script. So I was still backing up in the old server. So things can go wrong. Luckily, we didn't have any trouble. So you need to be careful about this. And the next one, and here I didn't have anything to do. We have an extra backup system, which is going through the main instance to take the backups, which are just 1 day there. And when they upgraded the license of so the new version of this one, they have a very specific interpretation of the license that didn't allow any more network mounting, so it was not reading the content store. So with the database, it was fine, but we didn't have any backups of the content store. And I didn't do anything to break it. So if it worked once, it's still, if it doesn't change anything, it can go wrong. So what we decided, my service manager said, you need to do restores often. How often? Okay, 1 every quarter. And first quarter we do this institution, then we do this building, and then we do the other one. So we started doing it manually. And for the first year, it went well. We discovered some issues, but we said, okay, we can't carry on doing this manually. We have to go automation of the recovery. So we have one extra instance of Alfresco who is going to go every day starting at 7 o'clock in the morning in 6 minutes. That's 6 and 66 minutes. And then it was going to take the backup from each backup instance. It's going to inject the database into the PostgreSQL, and then it's going to start Alfresco, and it's going to verify some other things. So after it has started, we will be able to answer every day the same question when the recovery of the backup is being done. Does it start? Can I log in? Is my content store correct? The fact that I can log in, you can say, well, I mean, if it starts, you can log in, of course. But this is also testing your synchronization with the Active Directory, for instance, or your authentication with somewhere else. So it's good. For the content store, what we do is we go through the database and we check the size of each file. We go and check in the physical recovery and we see if the size is correct. So you get a short report saying how many nodes are in the database, the total files, size is okay, did we find any orphans, and this is what you get. So this is an example of something that went wrong. You get here 5 objects less than the total one that were validated. None of them have a problem of the size. We had orphan nodes. And when you get an orphan node, you get a report which says which is the node reference, You see this is an archive node and the file name that is missing. So this is probably somebody who added something into Alfresco who was very large and said, oh no, we are using too much disk, remove it. And then it says that in the content store it's still sitting there. So we remove it with RM, so it's not there anymore. And that's why we have this orphan node. But I have a funny case, which is an orphan node with no node reference. I don't know what it is. If you know, please tell me afterwards. So this is the kind of things that you can find out. And it's good to have this automated every day, because you improve your confidence and you can go sleep better. So what's next? We need to improve the reporting because that one is ugly, and my service manager is saying like, nah, it doesn't look very good. And I also would like to have verification of the Solar indexes. So if you have an idea, please tell me, because I need some help there. And I also would like to have a differentiation between the cold backups and the hot backups. We do cold backups only on the weekend, one day, and for the rest of the week, we just do hot backups, thanks to the fact that we are using PostgreSQL. So we went from 4 restore tests a year to 7 per day. Isn't that better? So I hope they convinced you, because I didn't see many hands raising it, to also do it automated. So that's my talk for today. Thank you.
It's working? No? It is? Okay, thanks. So next is about reverse proxy. Not working?
Okay.
1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, no. No, it's better, thanks. Next is about reverse proxy. I have to speed up. And the reason why we want reverse proxy in front of Alfresco is easier configuration for SSL, making redirects, making more security easier. And we have experience with NGINX and Apache. We used Apache for a long time because it's much easier to set up. But it has some drawbacks for scalability because it's not an event-driven, it's a process-driven mechanism, which means if you run share, you have 15 or 20 processes running for every client, and that's exploding your system. So let's take a look on NGINX, how to do it on the Tomcat side. You have to define 2 more connectors running the HTTP endpoints. For here you see 81 or 82 for HTTP and HTTPS. And on the other side, no, it's not working. Yeah, on the other side, you need to resolve the calling web server, which is transported hopefully from the reverse proxy, so your Alfresco is knowing the URL you're calling from. On the other hand, you can of course still use Apache, which uses hopefully HAP as protocol because it has some more nice features we don't have on HTTP, but we have to take care about WebDAV. So you have to enable WebDAV in Apache to take care about the requests we need to take through. And for NGINX, we don't have WebDAV support by default, and that's the reason why it's a little bit tricky. You have to compile it for your own to have the WebDAV support also on the reverse proxy. To make it easier, you will get scripts for that from us. But taking a look on scalability, we have for the first page 170 requests for one share page, which is a lot. And when we make a reload, it's still 120 requests. It's totally the same if we use our configuration with reverse proxy or not. But in the back end, we compare 170 to 5 requests. So no need to explain what this means to the back end. That this will scale up the system enormously. And that's the reason why we want to use it and why it's making the system more scalable. If you already also wanted to use it, we have a project on GitHub where we store the configuration. Just give us feedback how you use it. And you will find all the configuration examples in the project there. We try also to cache thumbnails, CSS, JavaScript, which speeds up the system enormously, and you can define how this works. The caching header is no longer required because Alfresco did the job to enhance this in the share logic. And so what is still there is the effect for caching on the reverse proxy side. Oh. So any feedback is welcome. You're invited to go to the GitHub project, download the configuration. Maybe it's not online by today, but I promise tomorrow. I think it should be used by any project which is available from outside or for more than 100 users. Thanks.
Sneaking a little bit early. My name's Ian Wright. I work for MalariaGen, which is a worldwide consortium of malaria. A worldwide consortium. A worldwide consortium of malaria researchers. I'm going to talk about single sign-on using CAS, but it's relevant to any external auth. You can see here it's a moving target, but I've been doing it since 3.4 and managed to make it work all the time, so don't worry too much about it being a moving target. So why am I talking about it? Users really like single sign-on. It's been a major success factor in our implementation. Plus the docs are quite old and incomplete and reference old versions and yeah, don't work very well. What are we trying to do? We need to set the getRemoteUser on the HTTP request. So docs use model with CAS, which is tied to Apache, and it's old and not very well maintained. And so who, if like us, you get people to sign in using their email address, that's a problem because you can't change somebody's Alfresco username and they can change their email address. So make sure you configure CAS to send a static email. How am I doing it? By using the CAS Java client, which puts in some filters. I'm doing that by changing the web XML. I know that's not a great idea. See the next slide. Why not use the web fragment? If you use the web fragment, it does work, but if you deep link, so you link directly to a document, you won't get there first time you log in. You'll always get sent to the dashboard, which isn't such a good thing. The reason for this is because the CAS filters need to be applied before the Alfresco filters. There's some dance in there which ends up sending it to the dashboard. So it could be made to work. How? Up to version 5C, it's been fairly stable. You just change these two files according to the documentation. Problem is, after version 5C, external auth broke really badly. I hoped I wasn't going to have to say that. I'm hoping it's fixed in the version that's come out this week. What's good about 5D is that there's a new CMIS endpoint. It actually lets you access the CMIS endpoint through the share proxy, which when you've got single sign-on means you can easily access CMIS from any JavaScript application. I've got a Dojo store connector which works brilliantly with this, so this is a real advantage. I have done a patch. There's a JIRA referenced here. It works fine with 5.0D. I'm using that. I've tried it in 5.1. I think it works, but it puts exceptions in the log. So what happens to log out? Log out disappears when you configure this. So you think, oh, it's simple. I'll just go in, change the iCal, put the log out option back, but it doesn't work. You click log out, it sends you to the dashboard. The filters then send you off to CAS, which log you back in, which send you back to the dashboard. You're still logged in. So what have you got to do about that? You've got to log out of CAS as well. Now, you wouldn't have thought it, but log out has changed a lot. It changes every version. It's unbelievable how much this changes. Hopefully, it's more stable now. But what you've got to do at the moment is you've got to replace the logout service in your iCal customization, and you've got to tell it which CAS logout page and logout destination to go to. This is done using a service XHR call. It used to be get, but now it's post. Get was better in my opinion. Thing to be aware of is the content type is changed by default. See that? Invites are badly broken for us. I don't think that's down to single sign-on, but it's something to be aware of. Test it out. Make sure it interacts with your single sign-on system. Passwords aren't held in Alfresco anymore. There are two places you can change it in Alfresco. One is on the drop-down menu. That's easy to change. There's a tab in the profile. That's not easy to change. You don't get much user info through this mechanism. You can, it would be possible, but you can't. So it's a good idea to synchronize with LDAP as well, so that you get names and stuff like that coming in. It also allows any non-web-based things. Top project there on GitHub, it all works for 5.0. There's a branch for 5.1. There's a lot more detailed explanation on the blog, or contact me on Twitter or email. Thank you.
Hey, we usually don't do questions for lightning talks, but I think if you have one question for one of these two guys, I'm not answering questions too tight. If you have any question, have a go now. Otherwise, we just go for the next speaker. Okay, one question there.
Thank you. You mentioned something about the Alfresco, this is to Ian, by the way, about the username and problems having that using as emails in Alfresco. Could you elaborate slightly more on that, please?
Okay, so you can't change the username in Alfresco. It's not possible. So once you've logged in as a particular person, then that's it. Everything's set up with that. If you change your email address, you've got to go through setting up the user again from scratch, and all the references to the documents they've edited and all that kind of thing is lost. So it's a really good idea, if you can, to use something other than the email address. We've currently got a rather bizarre system, because we set up our Alfresco before we had our single sign-on. So we've got people who log in with one email address, but their CAS username, their Alfresco username is their old email address, which is a bit confusing.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that's, I think, our problem as well.
Thanks. Any other question in the room? No? Okay, so thanks to speakers again, please.